What's up, y'all? It's DZ. If you like what we've been putting down on the channel, make sure to leave a like, share, subscribe, all that mess. You know the like button's free. You know all of it's free. You know the vibes by now. Without any further ado, let's get to Ultimate Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Alright, so I think I'm gonna try to start doing videos a little bit different now. I don't want to feel like I'm constantly having to only read one issue per YouTube video, and one issue takes like 19 minutes to read, you know, so I think I'm gonna try to do this a little bit faster paced. So we're gonna read issues 1 through 5 of Ultimate Spider-Man. It's the 2011 run. I believe this is the very first time Miles actually got his very first showing that wasn't just a cameo or just like, you know, a one-off. You know, I think this is his very first solo series. In reading through the story, I kind of realized that Miles has the same backstory with Peter when it comes to his powers. Like, it was all on accident, and he didn't want to be Spider-Man. Like, neither of them wanted to actually have the mantle before it was thrust upon them. And we start off with the Prowler breaking into Osborn Industries, trying to find some device. I can't really tell what it is at the moment, but you know, he picks up a radioactive spider who is gonna give to his nephew later on in the story. Speaking of his nephew, we have a young Miles Morales who just won a lottery into a charter school, which is like his parents' dream school for him. And now Miles doesn't really seem too interested. Like, he's just kind of there, while every other kid who didn't win is like crying and snotting. All their parents are like disappointed and all this stuff, but Miles just is kind of there, and his parents are extremely happy. And so it just seems like he's just having too much pressure thrust upon him. So instead of actually deal with it, he decides to go with his Uncle Aaron, who he doesn't know his name is the Prowler, and like he's like a villain, you know, he doesn't know any of that. And so when he goes to sit down and, you know, he's just relaxing with his Uncle Aaron, that spider bites him. And it's of course radioactive spider, blah blah blah. He has spider powers now, but instead, when he wakes up, instead of just having super strength, super speed, like all that stuff, he also has the ability to be invisible. So already this Spider-Man is setting himself apart completely from the normal Spider-Man. And it's like, low-key, he's just like a more powerful version of the original Spider-Man. And eventually somebody tries to mug him, in which he figures out that he also has this electric shock type power. It's like, it's called the Venom Burst later on, but like right now it's just like a taser that comes out of his hand. And a lot of people are telling him that he's a mutant. It's just like, oh, this mutant's coming, like leave him alone, that kind of stuff. And it seems like the whole of New York are just terrified of mutants. And I'm pretty sure it has a lot to do with the Avengers and Spider-Man's going-ons in general, because remember, this is the Ultimate Universe. So the Avengers headquarters is in New York. So they must deal with a lot of crazy stuff from the day-to-day. And since the X-Men are roaming around, that means that Magneto and all of the mutants are around as well. Well, I mean, I guess the X-Men are mutants, but you get my point. And so Miles immediately goes to his friend Genki, that was minding his own business, honestly, and like making a whole Lego set that was taking him 3 weeks. But you know, superpowers come first, I guess. But he can't control any of his powers, so it's really hard to show him that he's, you know, a mutant now, I guess, quote unquote a mutant now. So instead he explodes the kid's Lego set. For some reason, like, you couldn't have did this to like a paper towel or something, dog. Like, my Lego set, come on, dude. I didn't do nothing to you. That was just disrespectful. But it gives him the whole rundown. It's just like, I got bit by a spider, and you know, now I have superpowers. I was at my Uncle Aaron's house, like I have no idea what's going on. As Genki's like talking to him, and just like low-key not really believing him, Miles starts to turn invisible because it looks like he's getting embarrassed. And so when his dad comes and picks him up from Genki's place, it's like a long father-son conversation that just basically boils down to, your Uncle Aaron is a criminal. And although I used to do bad things with him, I learned from my mistakes and I got wiser. He's still doing things that you definitely don't want to get involved in. And what his father is really talking about is the fact that he's the Prowler, you know, like he actually, I don't really know too much about the Prowler. So during this period of me learning about Miles Morales, I'm most definitely gonna have to learn about him. Anyway, we have this little scene where Human Torch and some ice character. I think that's Iceman. I can't really tell. We have the scene where Miles is kind of admiring them just, you know, flying around the air, and they're technically minding their own business. You know, that's how they get around while people just walk. His dad is just like, I wish they would just all leave the city. Like, I don't want them around me. I just want to be a normal human being. Like, they're too extra, basically. And you know, that kind of makes Miles suppress his powers more, but it was made known to him that he's not a mutant at all, because mutants are born with the X gene. So he's a Spider-Man, because Spider-Man was born by getting bit by a spider. You know, like there's no other cases of that besides Spider-Man. So he's not denying his mutant side, he's denying his Spider-Man side. And after that, he immediately starts trying to climb on walls and, you know, do Spider-Man stuff. And he actually can. You know, like he can actually walk on walls. He can stick to things. He seems to have super strength at this point. And the only logical thing to do is to go talk to Uncle Aaron, the one that actually had the spider on his person. But when they go back to his apartment, it's completely empty. So Genki and Miles kind of like start strolling the city streets, and it's just like, well, what are we supposed to do? Like, I have no idea how dude even moved out that fast. Like it's only been 24 hours since I last saw him. Like what happened? You know, and they get interrupted by the sound of firefighters racing down the street, right? And Miles is kind of like, I have to do something. Just because I have the power means that I have to help in some way. And so he jumps over everybody. That long leap, boy, he made that long leap. Stuck to the wall, grabbed old girl out and threw her. That was honestly, this is the most disrespectful way to save somebody. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Like, he didn't even grab her or nothing. He just threw her out. He said, hey, if you don't get out this burning building, you know, I mean, granted, she fell onto the cushion, so, you know, she's fine. He does end up jumping out the window carrying a girl and a puppy to safety. He got tugged on by the shirt, by the little girl, and he's just like, that's how it really feels to be a hero. And it's funny because the firefighters over here looking at the kid jumping back and forth. He's just like, I told you Spider-Man was black. But you know, Miles had first superhero outing nerves and started throwing up after. He was just like, this was so daggum stupid. Like, I got burnt, I got singed up. He's over here going through it. At the end of the day, he's just like, I can't do it. This isn't me. Like, I don't want to get burnt. I don't want to get beat up. I am terrified. You see what Spider-Man goes through? I do not want that. So Genki and Miles end up being roommates in the charter school. And they come up with a third roommate named Judge. So they can't really be as secretive as they want to, because Genki is the only one that knows about Miles' secret about, you know, being Spider-Man. And so eventually Miles starts to have this dream where somebody's electrocuting him to death. And as he wakes up, there's an emergency drill in the charter school that he's going to, because Spider-Man got shot. Now, while the news is being broken, Miles decides that it's his turn to like actually go see, and he decides to run straight to the battlefield to see what's going on, because, you know, it feels like, to him, it feels like he's destined to do this anyway, so he's just like, whatever. So this is right after the events of Peter Parker's Last Stand, which is also in the Ultimate Marvel universe, and this is the story of Peter Parker actually being killed. Now, this was a story about how he got into a fight with a lot of his enemies. And, you know, he came out on top, but at the end of the day, he died. And Miles had to watch him die. And as the news broke to the rest of the world, Miles only felt regret. And he only felt that it was his fault. Because if he accepted his powers and accepted who he was becoming earlier, then he would have been in the loop and actually been able to help the Spider-Man. Because remember, even though he's really inexperienced and he doesn't really know what he's doing, he still has more power. Like, he has more variety than the original Spider-Man, while also having, you know, the web crawling or the building crawling and the super strength and all that stuff. He just doesn't have experience. So he could have helped, but since his fear blocked him from moving forward, he didn't. That was the first time Miles Morales felt the weight of a human life. And as he secretly strolled into Peter Parker's funeral, he saw a grieving Gwen Stacy and asked her, why did Peter Parker become Spider-Man? And it was because he realized that with great power becomes great responsibility, regardless of whether you want it or not, regardless of how you feel about having the power or not. If you do have the power, you must act. And Genki actually gave Miles his very first Spider-Man costume. It was an old Halloween costume that they got like a couple years ago, you know, doing Halloween things. And when the new Spider-Man decides to don it and wear it, you know, start jumping off buildings and city streets, he crashes into a window and makes himself look bad. Rip already. And it seems like their third roommate, Judge, consistently gets locked out of the dorm room. But, you know, they get scolded for locking the door because that's, like, never supposed to happen. And it's funny because Miles is hiding under his sheets with the spider suit on. And he starts monologuing to himself just like Spider-Man does. Now he has the random red text bubbles and talks too much just like the OG Spider-Man. You'll love to see it. You'll love to see it. And while he's surveying the city for what seems like the second time, he's just like, okay. I need to figure out the buzzing in my head thing. I wonder what that is. Head buzzing. Buzzing in the head. Is it cancer? Did that spider give me cancer? Because if it is, I swear. And then it gets kicked in the face. And it was none other than Spider-Woman that actually kicked him in the face. And she's just like, dude, Spider-Man just died. What are you doing right now? Like, to her, it's like disrespect, straight up. And you know, they have a little altercation where Spider-Woman just straight up grabs Miles' mask off. And then she just, you know, webs him up real quick. And he ends up knocking himself out. And when he wakes up, he's in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s care. Now we have the Ultimate Avengers watching Miles as he's in custody, while Nick Fury is just like, hey, I got this, don't worry about it. Y'all leave. It's 1-to-1 real quick. So he talks to Miles and basically he's just like, I know who you are. I know who your uncle is. I know a lot about you. I'm Nick Fury. That's all you need to know. I'm Nick Fury. So they go back and forth and eventually Nick's just like, okay, so you got bit by a spider, right? Just like Peter Parker. And how did this happen? Miles just like, well, it was at my uncle's house. Nick's just like, oh yeah, Aaron Davis, I know him. Whoa, how do you know him? Oh yeah, he's the Prowler. You didn't know about that? So while this little interaction is happening, Electro is waking up in the hospital. He causes a citywide power shortage and Iron Man comes on the scene immediately. Gets his batteries drained, nothing. Next on the chopping block is Hawkeye. Arrows do nothing to electricity. When will you learn? Then Spider-Woman comes up, punching him in the face. What does that do? I don't even know who you are. Thrown through a window. Nothing. The Avengers just got dealt with in 3 seconds. Now, I know this is a Miles Morales comic, and they're not supposed to be doing too much, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they just got dealt with. They got to hold that L for the rest of their life. Right, so Electro ends up going into S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters where a invisible Spider-Man throws a barrel at him. You know, he starts throwing stuff at him. And Spider-Man actually gets the upper hand when he turns invisible. You know, and then he uses that Venom shock. And it's over. Then all the Avengers come up like, what just happened? Did this kid just take Electro out so fast? Like, how do you do that? And Miles is just like, I'm just that guy. I don't know what to tell y'all. So I think it's Jessica Drew. I think that's the Spider-Woman's name. But Spider-Woman, out of costume, walks up to Miles and Genki and is just like, you know, we met earlier. This is my civilian costume, but this is your spider costume. With great power, you know the rest. Yeah, I ain't even gotta say it. You proved yourself last night. You had 0 chances. Now you got 1. You gotta prove yourself as the new and improved Spider-Man. And that's how Miles Morales got his suit, how we started off, and how he became the next Spider-Man. That was fun. Let me know if y'all want a part 2 of me finishing off this 2011 run. Because, you know, we still got to learn about the Prowler. We still got to figure out how Miles Morales actually fits into the Ultimate cast. So, yeah. With that being said, I love you all. Y'all have been great people. And I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end. And until next time, my friends, take care. Goodbye.